And I work at Montessori School with Richard, and we're solar as a parent. And I'm going to finish today's session by just going through some of the fundamentals of Montessori, I guess. Talking about understanding understanding development, the Montessori way. So a newborn baby is an amazing creation. She is full of possibilities. Her parents really cannot predict what her life will be like. How she will pass through childhood, how she will assert herself as an adolescent, or what she will decide her life's calling will be. They can hope, you can hope and dream as you hold your newborn close and marvel over the wonder of her birth. But really, the huge potential within her is latent. So over years, in different societies and in different cultures, Maria Montessori observed children, and she was able to build a picture of childhood that led us to the grouping of children that we use today. And she theorized that as children matured from babies to adult, they went through separate phases, and she called these phases planes of development, and each of them lasted about 6 years. So birth to 6, 6 to 12, 12 to 18, and 18 to 24. And each plane is characterized by certain traits that, if catered to effectively, make it a time of growth that's relatively calm and positive for everyone, for the child and the family. At each plane, it's as though we're looking at a totally different child or young person. So this is the drawing of the planes of development, and you'll see that the first and third plane, birth to 6 and 12 to 18, are divided into 2 subplanes. And that's because those first 3 years of those planes, the birth to 3 and the 12 to 15, are times of enormous growth. And the change between a newborn and a 3-year-old is phenomenal. From a helpless infant to a functioning and relatively independent 3-year-old, that's phenomenal, the change. And the same the change between a 12-year-old and a 15-year-old, the growth of puberty, both internally and externally. There's huge growth. So the huge acquisition of skills and attitudes is particularly intense at that age. And you'll see that the second and the fourth plane, the 6 to 12-year-olds and the 18 to 24-year-olds, they're just whole. And that's because, as a general rule, the development for that time is calm, it's relatively unperturbed, they're a lot more healthy physically, so they don't get as sick as much, and it's just a less stressful time for everyone, hopefully, and generally. But the first plane is the most important, because it's the foundation of everything that comes afterwards, and particularly the first 3 years. And just as in a building, if the foundations are strong, then the building will be able to withstand to the forces of most nature. And it's the same for our children. If our foundations, if the foundations of those first 3 years are strong and sure, and the materials we use are sound, and the workmanship is thorough, then those 3 years are going to be a sound foundation for the rest of that child's life. If it's not, then really for the rest of that child's life we're going to be making up for it. But if it is, then we're going to be building on it and making it stronger and surer and more beautiful as time goes by. This is my grandchild. Isn't he gorgeous? So we often refer to the first period as the time of the absorbent mind. And it's during this time that children soak up everything in their environment. And by everything, we mean everything. So the television that's on in the background or the foreground, depending on how you live life, everything that's on that television is taken in, even though they can't understand it. The way we argue, the way we speak to each other, the way we make requests, the way we offer and receive love, the way we fold laundry, the way we rest, and even the way we go to the toilet are all taken in. There is no filter in these little ones during those first 3 years in particular. And sometimes the effects of these observations aren't felt for many years to come. But all of them together form the foundation for the rest of that child's life. By the time a child is 3, they've absorbed enough of the values and attitudes of the people around them to fully participate in the society into which they're born. And this includes all of our known and unknown prejudices, or should I say acknowledged and unacknowledged prejudices. The child begins to, in the next 3 years, so between 3 and 6, they begin to consciously act on those impressions that they've absorbed in those first 3 years, and they use them to further enhance their personality. So the child in the first plane is gifted with certain sensitivities towards acquiring skills that will be helpful to them for the rest of their life. We're not like a wolf and have a wolf cub is born and they have drives and they have born with instincts that will take them through to adulthood. Children don't have that. They have what Montessori has called sensitive periods, and they're sensitive, and the absorbent mind, certain gifts of early infancy. But these sensitivities drive them towards gaining a particular skill. And sometimes they'll gain that skill whether we want them to or not, or whether we help them or not. For instance, the ability to walk. So, providing that there's nothing wrong, a child will work their butts off to be able to walk, and they don't give up, and they don't cry if they fall over and stop because it's too hard. They keep going and they keep going until they're walking, and that's a sensitive period for movement. And similarly, they have a sensitive period for the acquisition of language. So a baby is born with no language at all, but by the time they're 3, most of them are fairly fluent in what they say and can hold quite an intelligent conversation, given their age. And that acquisition of language is a work for them. As Pam was saying, work for children is not work for us. It's something they strive towards. They really want to be able to communicate with us. They see us talking and they know that it's going to be important, and they work hard for it. And they have a sensitive period. A sensitive period for language is those first whole 6 years that allows them to be particularly responsive to the language. So you often say that, if you want to learn a second language, do it in those first 6 years, because that's when we're most receptive to it. It's not that we can't learn those skills afterwards, it's just that it's a lot more effortful, and we have to put in a lot more time and conscious effort. Some sensitive periods only last a couple of weeks, and if you miss them, they're gone. That's okay. As I said, if they're gone, it doesn't mean that skill can't be learned. It just means they have to work a lot. We have to work a lot to support them, and the child has to work a lot. So sensitive periods, you'll find a 2-year-old will be fascinated by tiny things, and they'll stop and they'll look at something, and you'll wonder what they're looking at, and there'll be a little insect walking along the ground, and they're totally fascinated. So what a child needs from her parents during these years is sensitive encouragement and guidance. And it's a recognition of the importance of the stage, and that the child needs to master things in order to move on to the next phase. And we, as Sola was saying, we can help or we can hinder. And to help, we need to be there, and we need to give them unconditional love, even when our child wants to show his or her independence in a way we're not entirely in agreement with. We need to give them our support and our love and permission to explore and manipulate and to act. And we need to respond to questions and be consistent. And the child needs order in their environment in order to feel secure, and consistency from adults surrounding them. And once they feel that consistency, then they feel a lot more free to explore. And we need to provide him or her with an environment that allows them to be a full and contributing member. So things at the right height and set out, as Sola was saying, not everything in a toy box. I must admit, I used a toy box for my youngest children, not for my older ones. I knew better by then. And being able to do as much as possible, and that involves time. It's one of the hardest things to give children, but it's one of the greatest gifts. So time so that they can try for themselves and feel as though their efforts are worthwhile. Now the second plane of development, from 6 to 12-year-olds, as a time when children are ready to explore the world and their place in it, as Richard said. It's a time for imagination. It's not that the imagination isn't there in the birth to 6-year-olds, but in the 6 to 12-year-olds, their imagination can take them any time or any place. And that's what a Montessori school does, is take great advantage of that. And it's a time for social interaction. The social aspect of being human comes into play big time in the 6 to 12 class. So, for instance, you'll have a group of children who'll go outside and play a game of soccer, and they've got half an hour. They'll spend 20 minutes working out the rules, and they'll only be left with 10 minutes left to play. Now, so long as that doesn't happen every day, they'll be fine with that, because the rules are important, and working out how to be together is more important sometimes than the actual game. So these guys are ready for big work that takes them to different times and places, as I said. And they're in a stage of moral development. So you'll often hear from 6 to 12-year-olds, it's not fair, you said, or she didn't, or I had to when I was her age. I got a watch when I was, she got a watch when she was 10, and I didn't get one until I was 12. All of that kind of stuff comes out. But even despite that, it is a time of calmness, and children are more emotionally stable. So the birth to 3-year-olds, they do get frustrated, and particularly, and the 3 to 6-year-olds as well, and because they can't use a language to express themselves adequately, and there are still things that they want to do and they can't quite do. These guys, there's a lot they can do, and they have the language to be able to express themselves, so emotionally they're a lot more secure, and they're able to communicate that. And as I was saying, that the health at this age, the birth to 6-year-olds gets sick a lot more often than the 6 to 12-year-old. And it's a time of great intellectual development, as Richard was saying, that the intellectual curiosity of a 6 to 12-year-old is phenomenal, and provided you keep putting interesting things in front of them, they'll keep soaking them up. And that's what's exciting about learning, working with this age. And the other thing is they want to push themselves at this age, mentally and physically, and they want to work hard. And they want to develop their social skills and find out how groups work. So they want to form clubs, and they want the clubs to be exclusive. So you can't be in our club. And our job is to help them be exclusive without being mean about it. But they want to see how that works, and they want to try out different roles. And there is a hierarchy, and they want to know how that works. And so they try that out as well. And they try out being mean to each other, just to see how that works and see how it feels. And then, in the next brief, they'll be amazingly compassionate, often to the same person. They lie with a lot more imagination. And a birth to 6-year-old, they'll just say, no, it wasn't me, while they're holding whatever it was that, happened. But a 6 to 12-year-old will be able to weave a great tale for you and be completely plausible. And actually, that's an important phase of this development, that you do need to be able to lie, because that's actually a sign of empathy, believe it or not. You don't want them to stay lying, but the actual skill. And they tell tales incessantly. And that's not to get someone in trouble, but to work out the rules, and to see if you're going to be consistent about applying them, and to see if you actually mean what you say. So fairness and justice are a huge part of this stage of development. So they play goodies and baddies and meanies and evils and superheroes and all of those kind of games to work out that kind of structure socially. And they want to do big work. This is a bit more of what Richard was showing you before, the power of 2. These guys were doing the power of 9. So again, they used a fair amount of equipment in the classroom. I think they went to Richard's classroom to borrow more, so that they could get as high as they could go. And as I said, they want to do big work that challenges their brain and takes them further. And one of the things we have in Montessori is a thing we call maximum effort. And that's where the situation is right, you've got the right tools and the motivation, that you will put in everything you have to gain mastery of something, to take it further or to explore. And that's a concept that we really want to encourage in Montessori. At this age, they need heroes, and heroes that display behaviours to aspire to. So children are fascinated by stories of people and places, and the big stories of the universe, as well as the more personal ones of people and their experiences. And so they want to hear your stories as well, because you're their heroes still at this age. And so treasure that, because it does go away. For a while, it comes back. It does come back, but treasure that time of being their hero. So they need to hear your stories, and they need to hear the things that went well, and they also need to hear the things that didn't go so well, and how you cope with that, and how you and what you learn from that. Because our children today are terribly anxious and afraid of getting things wrong. And one of the things they need to learn is that getting things wrong is just part of being human, and we all make mistakes, and we all learn and grow from them, and actually that makes us better. And that's a really important lesson for children to learn, and for 6 to 12-year-olds particularly, they really want to learn that lesson. So in the Montessori class, in the actual classroom, we aim to capture the children's imagination through story, so we do tell a lot of story. What we want to do is we want to sow seeds. Now we don't, the curriculum in a Montessori primary class is huge. It is immense, and we don't expect that all children will have covered all of it by the time they leave the class. But what we want to have done is sown enough seeds that their interest will have been piqued enough to take them through the process of finding out more and reasoning through, because those skills are going to be the ones that take them further into life. It's not the knowledge, you can get the knowledge from anywhere, but it's what you do with it. And so that's why we tell all these stories, to sow those seeds and get them excited and light in their eyes so that they'll go further. The family, this is my family, in the 70s. At the back there's that funny fringe. That's my brother with the barbecue tongs. The family is still important at this stage of the child's life. So the consistent and loving support of adults now needs to help the child explore the bigger world, to support them as they take risks and make mistakes and correct them, and to learn how to be active members of society, and to learn how to control their impulses and accept the consequences of the choices they make, both the good ones and the bad ones. So children do make inappropriate choices, and they need to know that there is a consequence to that, and that they're going to have to suffer through it, whether that's unpleasant or not. And that's just part and parcel of growing up and being an adult, because that happens for us. So Maria Montessori was a big fan of the scouting movement, because she felt that it was an organisation designed to help children explore the world and be independent in it. So all the camping skills and the scouting skills, as well as the strong moral development, was a way that children could be independent outside of the family. And she felt that at this age the child needs to start moving away from the family and being a member of society outside them, not completely outside them, because camping trips with the family are important as well, but there needs to be increasingly moments when they are away from the family, and to see how they go, to see how they cope, and to see what they're made of. So now the third plane, from 12 to 18, is again a turbulent time, as those children go through enormous upheaval, emotionally and physically. This is Karen, soulless boy. He's 12 and a half, as Sola said, and Winnemu is 15, or nearly. And you can see, so Karen's has gone into the 12 to 15 class, and Winnemu's in his last year. And Winnemu was not quite that short, but young and just at the beginning of his stage, 3 years ago. And look at him now. And that is the change. It's incredibly huge. So it's no wonder that there are some outward manifestations of this change. The changes are not just in the body, it's in spirit as well. So while there are huge changes letting us know that this child is changing into the young adult they're going to be, outside, there are internal changes as well. And that's where often we get the frustration that's expressed at this age. There is so much to cope with. And particularly at the age of the 12 to 15-year-old, the interest in academic subjects wanes away. And all of the work that they do now needs to be linked to something that holds the interest, and the more active it can be, the better. So this is the time when, unfortunately, in state schools where we ramp the academics up. But the 6 to 12-year-olds, they're the ones who are academically interested in that. The 12 to 15-year-olds, not so much. And it's not that they can't learn and that they don't get excited by things, it's just not their priority anymore. That's right, they are very busy being pubescent. So it is a time of great energy and great lethargy, often from 1 minute to the next. And it's a time of intense passion about injustice and indignity. And it's a huge desire that goes along with that to do something about it, to not leave it go. You know, the expression, ask a 14-year-old something while they know everything. You know, it's there for a reason. It's not that they know everything, but they really they get hugely passionate about things and want to make a difference and solve issues, and the debates they have can be quite intense. And it's a time to create themselves anew, as the adult they would like to see themselves. And they have flashes of these behaviours that are incredibly mature and responsible and well thought out, but there are many more flashes of there's still a much greater amount of time that is not. And our task as the parent and the teacher is to look towards the person we see in the flashes and treat them constantly as though they are that person. And let me tell you, it's no easy task at times, but it is really important and intensely rewarding for them to know that we see them as their best self. So when catered for effectively in an environment that respects and understands the changing needs that these teenagers are going through, they too can make great advances and solve the problems of the world and still remain polite to their parents. Okay, I might have been exaggerating about that last bit, but relatively it does go in ups and downs, and they need the boundaries reinforced, that's all I was saying, but they still do remain fairly polite, providing that's the expectation that you've set. So the final plane of development from 18 to 24 is the one that leads to full adulthood. And you'll, if you've been reading anything lately, you'll have been aware that recent brain research is saying that actually the brain doesn't finish fully developing until 25. So that front cortical, whatever it's called, it's gone from my head. There we go. They said that closes at 25, and then you've got a fully functioning person. And they're thoughtful, and that's when thoughtful and considered decisions can be made, taking into consideration the future and the impact that their decisions will have on others, and not just their others and their friends, but all of society. So emotionally, that's David. Pam taught David. He is confident and self-aware, and spiritually he's not only interested in finding good for himself, but society, and to do good for the society. And he can have strong moral values, and in his chosen profession often shows responsibility and leadership. The baby, born so many years ago, who's passed through the planes of development in a lovingly prepared environment with mindful adults to work alongside him, is indeed fortunate. So that adult is going to be a fully functioning, independent adult, well adapted to her time and place, and capable of adjusting to a new situation for her own good and the good of all humanity. She's moved through the planes of development as her dispositions urged her to. She's been able to capitalise on all of the characteristics of each plane, and so has been able to develop to her fullest. This was Montessori's vision. Working with adults would not do anything, because they already were fully formed and had all of their prejudices and ideas and attitudes and skills. They were already in place. It was through working with children that a new and more peaceful world would become possible. So it's up to us as parents to give our children the best, and not the best that money can buy, but the best of ourselves, and the best of our families, and the best role models, and the influences and experiences that we are capable of. And most of all, it's up to us to enjoy, because you really need to enjoy your time, because man, it's fleeting. The birth to 6, the consistency is really important. So if you're travelling around the world, all that constant change could be quite hard to cope with. The the 6 to 12-year-old, all of that kind of stuff is not as important anymore. It's the learning that's important, and the challenging themselves, and the being in different places. So that's a really good stage. Or the 18 to 24-year-old, but they're not necessarily going to want to go with you. They don't want to go with you. Yeah, at that stage, and you can never say because everybody's different, but really for Montessori, she's saying they need to develop themselves outside the family. So you give them opportunities that do that, rather than make the family a more tight unit. So it's not that you don't do anything with them, because that's really important, but yes, if you want to take them away between 6 and 12 is a good time. Yeah.
Your talk has got me thinking about Montessori secondary education, because you're talking about how, the state school system is really heavily influenced, on the academic, and that's not really where the kids are at. My children are at preschool and just about to move to Montessori primary, and thinking about what you're saying.
Come out to Wellwood.
Yeah. I mean, how important is it for them kids? I mean, it's a way down the track for me, but I'm just kind of thinking, how would they cope, for their own well-being in the state? Obviously.
It's completely up to you. You're lucky in Wellington that there is a high school relatively close. But for my children there wasn't, and they all went to a traditional high school, and they did okay. So they had their ups and downs, and that 12 to that's a 14-year-old year. That was the hardest, particularly for my oldest. But they survived. So it's not that they won't survive, and it's not that they're not doing well either. They're surviving and doing well. Those Montessori that they had from 3 to 12 really stood them in good stead. But if I could have, I would have kept going. Yeah. Hi, Shay.
Yeah, around similar, because I've got a son who's in that 12 to 15 group. And I wondered, in your opinion now, having visited schools in America and looked at this whole process, do we do more still, even at Waiora, in terms of academic stuff to about 12 to 15, because of parents' expectations, than is possibly good for them? How much would you cut back if you had free rein?
So did everyone hear that question at the back? Oh, good. I think there are aspects that we do a little bit more of, because we've still got to meet those national standards and prepare them for NCEA. And so Montessori is all about preparing the child for the culture in which they are in, so not to sit outside it. So, our children are going to go into university, or, polytech, or some, work. So they're going to go on to something, and they need to be ready for that. So if they're going to go on to university or polytech, they're going to need to be able to sit exams and be at the right level. So we need to do our work to get them at that level. So I think there are aspects that we would let go, but actually I think we can't let too much go, or they're not going to be at the level they need to be. So, yeah?
I think we're in an age of huge accountability.
Sure.
Okay? That's what's driving everyone right now. I think it's a very different issue than what's good for children. And I think the homeschooling, I totally understand the story. But it's just good with kids that should by and large. And I think a lot is probably done. I mean, if you want to see what kids can do, you take them on school camp.
Yeah, that's right.
Get them out of classrooms, and that's what, honesty is about.
Yeah, give them out, and give them out as much as possible. I think you don't want to let the children leave the academics behind completely, because they would. If you give the children free range and you ask them what they want to do today, they'll say nothing and mean it. Not like a primary child, they say nothing, actually they don't mean nothing, they just mean nothing that you want them to do. But an adolescent will say nothing and completely mean nothing. So you've got to give them parameters around that and keep them hooked into the academics, but in a way that is not academically focused. So that's why the humanities and occupations are are a science-based curriculum, but it's all about doing science, not learning science. And humanities is all about history, so it's our time, how we got to where we are today, and who's contributed to that. So it's all about what's meaningful to the student. So, Sheree, did you have it? Some children, as I was saying today about, there are many anxious children in today's world, and part of that, I believe, is because there are so many choices, and when there are too many choices, it's hard. So there are many anxious children, and those anxious children will narrow their world down to make it safer and make it feel better, and it's about helping them see that it is okay, and that making mistakes is okay, that learning new things is okay. And sometimes that doesn't take long, and sometimes it takes a long time. So you just got to keep going and going and going until you capture the spark, and then use that. And that's what we do, is keep giving lessons, and keep giving lessons, and keep giving lessons, and keep giving lessons until that spark lights. And it might take a while for some children to actually get that. It's hard.
Hi, just hearing about the narrative and the chain, and then sort of the importance of this early years of the preschool skills framework of scaffolding. And I'm wondering, is it possible for a child to come in from the 6 to 12 and succeed without that scaffold or that framework to build on, not knowing sort of Montessori way? Is it possible for a child to come in at that level?
Yeah, children do it all the time. So children come into the primary classes all the time, and you know, the 3 to 6 has set in place many practices and processes and attitudes and skills that mean moving into that 6 to 12 class is natural, and they can be active in it really quickly. For a primary child who's not had that background and comes in later, it takes a lot longer for them to orient themselves and make full use of what's available. They need to learn what work means. They need to learn what a teacher means when they say this, because they're not used to it. They need to learn how to respect somebody, how to speak to somebody in a way that is appropriate in that environment now, because it's different than often what it is in another school. There's so many things to learn before you can even begin to learn the material stuff. That I always say to parents, you need to wait a full year, and then some, depending on the child, before they're ready to really take advantage of what's available. But yes, the children come into that all the time. And into the 12 to 15 year, that's possible as well. At Whitewater we don't yet too much, because it's still a small environment and we're still building it. But once it's built in and strong and the routines are established, then that will happen there too. And the same thing, you would never take, well, you do sometimes. It's not ideal, let me put it that way. It's not ideal to take the child in at the oldest level of each age range. So it's not ideal to take a 5-year-old into a 3 to 6 classroom, or a 9-year-old into a 6 to 9 classroom, or a 12-year-old into a 6 to 12 classroom, because they are supposed to be the role models. And they're supposed to be the one who gives the lessons, and the one who knows what to do, and the one who sets the culture. And if you're a child who's just come in, you don't know what you're supposed to be doing, you don't know how to do things, you can't give lessons, and yet everybody your age is doing that. So it's awkward. And it's awkward for the child, and it's awkward for the teacher, and it's awkward for the parent. And so it's actually not generally a good idea to do it at that age, but otherwise, it's all right. So what's the time? Sorry, 2012. Okay. One more question.
I'm just thinking about children with special needs. If you've got a child that's, say, has a developmental delay, a couple of years behind, the plans of development, would you just sort of adjust those? You know, is it more of an age thing or a sort of developmental stage thing?
It's a developmental stage thing. The age range is general, because most children fall into it. But you know, in the 6 to 12 classroom, there are children in there who are not ready, who so could be back in the preschool. Their teeth haven't started falling out yet. Now that's one of basic indicators of a child being ready for the next plane. It's one of the most obvious. And their teeth are still in at 7. So, you know, ideally they would still be in the preschool, but our laws say that you have to start school on your 6th birthday, and so there they are in the 6 to 12 age. I mean, that's the beauty of having a 3-year age range, is that they can learn at their pace. And, you know, hopefully there are places where they can stay where they need to be rather than be bumped up. So, thank you very much. It's been wonderful having you. You've been a very patient and attentive audience, and it's been great that you've taken this opportunity. Now we're going to do a quick turnaround because the conference starts at 12:30. And I hope you have a lovely 2 weeks with your children. It will be delightful for you. Thanks.